Thank you for joining us today on Earthfile. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. It is believed that the new United States administration's policies could herald a pivotal moment in the global fight to tackle climate breakdown. The U.S. has an ambition for a zero-carbon energy sector. The question is, how can the country deliver that in practice? And also, what is the cost-optimal energy mix for the U.S. to achieve a renewables-led energy system? And can it be delivered within the aggressive timeframes set up by the new president? At the core of the U.S. energy policy is a pledge to invest $2 trillion to create a zero-emission electricity system by 2035. The stated aim is to drive economic recovery and job creation while protecting communities that lie in the crosshairs of climate change. We'll look at how this is working out today on the program. Just stay with us.
All right. Well, I'd like to welcome all of you to the Colorado Fuel Cell Center Laboratory here on the Colorado School of Mines campus. This has been a really fun place to grow for the past 15 years. 15 years ago, we were an empty building. Now, we are a heck of a lot more. So please, right this way.
The Colorado Fuel Cell Center, a project supported by the United States Department of Energy, seeks to advance fuel cell research, development, and commercialization.
Some of them involve pretty small devices for the fuel cells of tomorrow, but some of them aren't that small. Some of them are taking existing high technology readiness level products like this one and using them in ways no one's ever used them before. So I think a lot of us are familiar with hybrid cars. We're all excited about the way that engine and battery work together to give us very high gas mileage out on the highways. Well, this project here is about a hybrid electric generator, not for a car, but for a neighborhood. So you can imagine that if I join our fuel cell with an engine, I'm going to get a high-performance device at a nice price point that can power an entire village or town. Rather than a giant power plant, many small distributed generation plants are where we're headed here. Some of the other things I want to show you are down this way. All right, so one of the things we do is we make a lot of fuel cells here. We make them and break them. That's one of the funnest things about this laboratory. You get the big projects involving distributed energy and neighborhood electricity generation to the smallest devices to figure out why our batteries, our flow batteries and fuel cells are dying too fast. That's kind of a fun range of stuff to work on under one roof. You're not going to find that in too many labs in the world, let alone in the country here in the US. So here's one of these test stands, but here, these are the furnaces where we make all these things. This is where we cook up our little ceramic devices and make the proton conducting ceramic fuel cells that I was telling you about. Coming this way, we have more test stands with active researchers doing their thing, working hard to make the devices of tomorrow, bring electricity to life, fuel cells and electrolyzers and flow batteries to life. That's about making ammonia to store solar and wind power. Right this way. So this right here, a bank of test stands is used to help us understand why our devices don't last as long as we wish. You ever notice how your computer battery doesn't last as long as when you first bought it, or your cell phone battery just doesn't have the kick that it used to have? Well, our fuel cells and electrolyzers and flow batteries have the same problem. In this case, we're going all the way down to the very single component, the single interface at which that degradation, that performance degradation happens. Understand why these things don't last for 40,000 hours. What do we need to do to get them to last that long and make them more cost-effective and practical for society?
Many different types of fuel cells are available for a wide range of applications. Hydrogen has gained traction over the years as a future green fuel of choice, increasingly touted as a way to decarbonize emissions-intensive heavy industry and transportation. Hydrogen fuel cells produce electricity by combining hydrogen and oxygen atoms. The hydrogen reacts with oxygen across an electrochemical cell similar to that of a battery to produce electricity, water, and small amounts of heat. Nearly all of the hydrogen consumed in the United States is used by industry for refining petroleum, treating metals, producing fertilizer, and processing foods. United States petroleum refineries use hydrogen to lower the sulfur content of fuels.
small stations.
The National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, began using liquid hydrogen in the 1950s as a rocket fuel, and NASA was one of the first to use hydrogen fuel cells to power the electrical systems on spacecraft. Nighttime illuminations are nothing new for Paris' Eiffel Tower, but for the first time on the night of Tuesday, 25th of May at 9:30 p.m. GMT, it was lit up using hydrogen-powered spotlights. For 3 minutes and 30 seconds, lights and lasers of various colors danced on the iconic monument's facade thanks to energy provided by a hydrogen-powered generator.
Usually, this kind of event requires energy and diesel. Here, we're using a hydrogen generator, an electro-hydrogen generator which supplies the electricity. This same generator will be the one providing the energy necessary to power the spotlight that will light up the Eiffel Tower.
Energy Observer Development, the company that built the generator and which works on technologies using the gas to generate electricity, claims its generator is certified renewable and emits no greenhouse gases.
The government has announced a very, very important hydrogen plan. 7 billion euros in investment are meant to develop all these technologies, develop hydrogen infrastructures for production, distribution, but also all the applications, and to develop transport, as we can see in the village during the few days of this event.
Energy storage is a rapidly growing segment of the clean energy sector, and prices are dropping fast. Yet many are still struggling to understand how to value energy storage as an investment. As a growing number of cities, states, and businesses commit to 100% clean energy, storage is already playing a pivotal role in determining how they will meet these targets.
Proton-conducting ceramics.
Neil Sullivan of the Colorado Fuel Cell Center and his team are working on how to solve this storage problem.
This device here is used for many purposes. Two are to create clean, dry, pure hydrogen from water vapor for energy storage, to store solar and wind power at a high capacity. Now, of course, a little guy like this isn't going to really store all that much wind power, is it? So the project here that RPE is funding is to scale up this small device into multi-cell stacks, just like we stack up batteries inside a flashlight to increase capacity. So what we've been doing here at the School of Mines at the Colorado Fuel Cell Center is increasing our capacity to 10 times the size of our past devices, and then integrating these devices into the multi-cell stacks that I tell you about. Here's one cell, here's its separator plate, here's the second cell, here's its other separator plate, and so on into a multi-stack, higher capacity device. This stacking looks simple, but brings many technical questions that we are wrestling with here at the School of Mines. We also work with an industrial partner to go yet beyond the size you see here. This is the world's largest proton-conducting ceramic electrolyzer cell ever made. This comes from Calgary, Canada. Fuel Cell Energy is our industrial partner on the RPE Rebels and Refuel programs to bring this technology to life. Now, one of the things we want to show you is our latest adaptation in manufacturing. We're going with tubular architectures for some of our projects, not just planar cells, but tubular cells as well. And we've incorporated a new atomistic ultrasonic spray tool to deposit the most critical, most tricky layers of the proton-conducting ceramic electrolyzer.
Colorado is one of many states in the United States of America that rose to the challenge of climate change during the years of the former administration and showing leadership in the country. It has big goals for combating climate change. By 2050, greenhouse gas emissions must be down 90% from 2005 levels, according to House Bill 19-1261, also known as the Climate Action Plan to Reduce Pollution, which Governor Jared Polis signed into law in 2019.
We had a
rather monumental year in the legislature in 2019, where depending on how you count it, there were 15 to 16 sort of major pieces of legislation that passed that focused on climate and greenhouse gas emissions, renewable energy, reforming the way that we regulate our electric utilities, energy efficiency, electric vehicles, and reform of our approach to regulating the oil and gas industry. And as part of that, it really sort of pushed many sectors of our economy to really accelerate their move towards clean energy and lower emissions, and in ways that I think really provided some interesting examples for states around the nation. I would say, for instance, with electric utilities, we're now in a place where utilities that represent 99% of the greenhouse gas emissions associated with electricity in the state are now committed to reductions of at least 80% in net pollution by 2030, with some of them actually being committed to reductions of greater than 90%. On electric vehicles, Colorado in 2019 adopted the zero emission vehicle standard. We became the first state in a decade to adopt that standard, and the only state that wasn't either on the West Coast or the Northeast. We were kind of the first purple state to do so, and that really opened the floodgates for other states.
States have banded together in efforts like the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, in which 10 New England and Mid-Atlantic states operate a program to cap and trade carbon dioxide emissions from power plants. 15 states, including Colorado, signed a memorandum of understanding to boost the market for electric medium and heavy-duty vehicles and phase out diesel-powered trucks by 2050. Colorado is also one of 10 states to have adopted California's zero-emission vehicles route to promote the sale of non-polluting vehicles such as electric cars.
Over the last few years, technology has really improved, where you can now use various sorts of remote sensing and other type of sensing technology to be able to come much closer to continuous monitoring of leaks than was ever possible in the past. And if you know where the leaks are coming from, it's relatively simple to fix them and stop those leaks from happening. There are also more and more opportunities to replace equipment with equipment that has a near zero emissions. So for instance, going from what are known as pneumatic controllers to zero emission electric controllers allows you to get rid of one source of methane pollution from the oil and gas industry. So the rulemaking that is moving forward right now at our Air Commission is designed to ensure that we get at least a 60% reduction in pollution from the oil and gas industry by 2030, and may well be able to go deeper than that.
With these plans come the storage questions. Recognizing that specific storage technologies best serve certain applications, the United States Department of Energy pursues a diverse portfolio of energy storage research and development to assure a continuous, affordable, and sustainable electricity supply.
So what we are seeing right now is this big transition towards much more renewables on our grid. So the key is now, and the challenge for the next years is how to integrate all this together. So how do you link your wind technologies, and you have your solar rooftops, and you have battery storages in your house, and you electrify our homes, and we're electrifying our transportation. How to integrate all this together? So the second, what we're calling is electrons to molecules. What we mean with this is that very soon, again, we will have, very likely, because we will deploy much more renewable energy, so we will have a potential surplus in electricity. And we want to use this very cheap electrons to what we say to create something else out of these electrons. This is very likely probably go through hydrogen, and from hydrogen we can create carbon-carbon molecules for the future. And the third one, what you described, the circular economy for energy materials, is based on this one, that right now a lot of our materials, we take them out of the ground, we create our devices, let's say a cell phone or even some of the materials we need for our solar panels, and then we put them onto a landfill. And this is not sustainable for the long run. So we need to find a way that we're taking the minerals and bring them back into our economy.
Today's energy storage devices are limited by the performance of their constituent materials. Overcoming these limitations requires understanding the myriad interactions that transfer ions or electrons in these devices and the physical and chemical processes that degrade them. The United States Department of Energy says performance and safety, cost-competitive systems, regulatory environment, and industry acceptance are the four key challenges to the widespread development of electric energy storage, which is why, with its national laboratories, it is offering various arrangements and agreements for research.
You know, when you know why natural gas is such a good fuel right now, is because it's easy to turn on and off. And when you go to very high penetration of renewables, you also need this type of long-term storage possibilities where you can bring on extra resources which produce electricity on very quickly, and also you want to turn them off very quickly as well. And this is where, for example, combustion turbines still is a very interesting option. What we still don't know is what will they run on. So this can be run, for example, on hydrogen. We're doing a lot of research also on this one. And again, you could create the hydrogen when we have a lot of windy days or very nice sunshines. You could take the electricity and produce hydrogen out of water. You split water, create hydrogen, and then hydrogen could be a storage molecule to then run in, let's say, days where you don't have enough sun or not have enough wind. Or you also could see that we decarbonize our natural gas. We're having a couple of very interesting research projects where you can see that you can create kind of methane in a way which is carbon neutral. So this can be done through biological processes, or this can also be done through catalysis. So this is some of the open questions we have to answer towards the decarbonization of our economy.
For grid applications, electricity must be reliably available 24 hours a day. Even second-to-second fluctuations can cause major disruptions that could potentially cost billions of dollars. New approaches to maximize energy storage capacity are essentially to bring intermittent renewables into the grid and effectively manage electricity generation to meet peak demand.
We have great wind, kind of down through the east side of the Rockies. We have very significant solar in a lot of places, including Colorado. We have the capability for storage, but we also have hydropower in the Northwest. And if we connected, Arizona with Washington or California with Wyoming, then you have the ability to meet these really significant targets that have been set, because you get to a place where you're very close to being able to generate power with the right set of transmission lines 24 hours a day from renewable resources, because the wind blows at different times, the sun shines at different times, and you have these hydropower resources, and then you add storage to it. You really get to a place in having a vision for how the West could be connected so that we could rely upon all of these renewable resources for, if not 100%, better than 90%.
Hydrogen and energy have a long shared history, powering the first internal combustion engines over 200 years ago to becoming an integral part of the modern refining industry. It is light, storable, energy dense, and produces no direct emissions of pollutants or greenhouse gases. But for hydrogen to make a significant contribution to clean energy transitions, experts say it needs to be adopted in sectors where it is almost completely absent, such as transport, buildings, and power generation.
And it's interesting for me to see how different markets bring out different solutions. Take the data storage market. The data centers that supply us with all the great websites and the Googles and all that stuff. Just a staggering volume of data in these data centers, just a staggering volume of energy to do all of that work. Where's that energy come from? Well, if you go and talk to the owners of those data centers, it comes from the utility, and there's some issues with such a large power draw. So what the Department of Energy is funding the Fuel Cell Center to do, and other groups in partnership with national laboratories, is to create generators that are made for the data center, custom for the data center, that fit to the data center. Applications like that, which are so well tied to the uniqueness of the technology, can really fill that niche that leads to large manufacturing, drops that cost down for manufacturing, decreases the cost of the product, and enables us to enter different markets beyond the niche. That's what you see happening right now here in the United States because of the unique conditions in the US between the federal government funding, the national laboratory techniques, and the supply of human resources from the universities like ours. Those resources harnessed together can really do a lot to decrease the carbon footprint that we are trying to reduce.
According to the International Energy Agency in its Future of Hydrogen report, supplying hydrogen to industrial users is now a major business around the world. Demand for hydrogen, which has grown more than threefold since 1975, continues to rise, almost entirely supplied from fossil fuels, with 6% of global natural gas and 2% of global coal going to hydrogen production. As a consequence, production of hydrogen is responsible for carbon dioxide emissions of around 830 million tons of carbon dioxide per year, equivalent to the carbon dioxide emissions of the United Kingdom and Indonesia combined. While less than 0.1% of global dedicated hydrogen production today comes from water electrolysis, with declining costs for renewable electricity, in particular from solar photovoltaic and wind, there is growing interest in electrolytic hydrogen.
We're all really interested in minimizing the amount of carbon dioxide we produce. We all want to decrease the amount of CO2 we're emitting into the environment. And fuel cells can do that better than just about anything. That is well understood, at least in our community of fuel cells. So we take the chemical energy in a fuel and we turn that into electricity. Fuel cells do that better than anything. We measure that betterness, if you will. We measure that betterness in the form of efficiency. What fraction of the chemical energy in that fuel got turned into electricity? And whatever isn't turned into electricity, that's just waste. You know, you're still making the carbon dioxide, you're still wasting stuff, but you're just not making the product you want, namely electricity. Now, fuel cells make more electricity per gallon of fuel than pretty much anything. And that's a great, great advantage. So that means you're making that much less pollution. The second thing that's often very desirable in fuel cells is they can run on hydrogen, pure hydrogen fuel, as can engines and other things. Fuel cells do that without, use of a hydrogen fuel eliminates the carbon dioxide formation. You're just not going to have any carbon in the fuel, so you're not going to have any in the exhaust either.
The number of countries with policies that directly support investment in hydrogen technologies is increasing, along with the number of sectors they target. There are around 50 targets, mandates, and policy incentives in place today that direct support hydrogen, with the majority focused on transport. Over the past few years, global spending on hydrogen energy research, development, and demonstration by national governments has risen, although it remains lower than the peak in 2008. The International Energy Agency says with declining costs for solar PV and wind generation, building electrolyzers at locations with excellent renewable resource conditions could become a low-cost supply option for hydrogen, even after taking into account the transmission and distribution costs of transporting hydrogen from often remote renewables locations to the end users. The International Energy Agency advises that the time is right to tap into hydrogen's potential to play a key role in a clean, secure, and affordable energy future. Like many innovations, the production has its challenges. We keep our eyes on the development and, of course, bring you updates. Thank you for watching today's episode of Earthfile. From me, Ayola Kasim, and the Earthfile crew here in Lagos. It's bye for now.